I'd like to call the June 13th, 2022 Board of Commissioners work session to order. Let's begin this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight, it's going to be led by one of our township engineers from RVE, Nick Cross.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Deanna, will you take the roll call, please?
Denise Hall, President.
Here.
Liz McNaney, Commissioner.
Here.
Martha Similaro, Commissioner.
Here.
Sandra Zedell, Township Manager.
Here.
Megan Weaver, Assistant Township Manager.
Here.
Lauren Gallagher, Township Solicitor.
Here.
Nick Cross, Township Engineer.
Here.
David Duffy, Chief of Police. Van Reeker, Zoning Officer.
Here.
And it is noted that Commissioners Ruth Damsker and Catherine Carter are absent, as well as Finance Director Nate Crittenden.
I think on the audio, we're having a little issue where it's still turned up, like from the last meeting possibly. It just seems very echoey.
Okay, did we fix the sound? We think? Or it's still too loud?
Let me check.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, it's getting better. I don't know. We can just continue, and I just wanted to make that note.
Okay, great. The next two items are two individuals who will be recognized at our business meeting next week. One of our crossing guards, Raymond Winter, and Susan McKnight from our police department. So that will happen at our business meeting next week. Lauren, were there any executive sessions?
Thank you, President Holt. The board did meet in executive session earlier this evening to discuss matters of personnel and potential litigation.
Thank you. Next up, we have public comments. If you didn't have time to register, I will ask for additional participants at the end. Thank you for respecting the 5-minute rule and practicing decorum. First up, we have Fred Hankin of 802 Clover Drive.
Want me to restate my name or?
Please.
Fred Hankin, 802 Clover Drive.
Thanks,
Quick
Fred.
question. The special commissioners meeting last week, when will those minutes be published, or have they been, and did I miss them? Or I know it was on YouTube, I think, but.
They haven't been published yet. They'll probably be ready for the July meetings.
But we'll get all that through our normal communications from the township?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Would anyone else like to make a public comment? No? Okay. Oh, yes, please come up. And if you could state your name slowly and your address.
Sure. My name is Glenn Hatfield, 1468 Kathy's Lane.
Thank you.
I had a question. It looks like you're about to talk about changing the zoning over the Pembroke Parkway area, so I'm interested in, what your thoughts are on it. It looks like the township's about 95, 97% built out. I know you folks were running on open space and improving the quality of life in the township, things of that nature. And now it looks like you've changed your format. You're looking to do more high-density housing, things of that nature. I'm concerned about the traffic congestion, more water runoff, pollution, noise, things of that nature. Given how fully the township is developed, I'd like to see more open space. I'd like to see lower density housing, commercial projects that would create less traffic in the township especially. So that's something I'm very interested in hearing more about tonight. Okay.
That's great. Yes, we haven't changed our focus. We still have the same focus. We are at the very beginning stages of that whole process in reference to the property that you mentioned. So we're at the very beginning. You'll absolutely have the opportunity to learn all about it and be part of the whole process if you like. And we actually next month, not this month, but hopefully next month, Van Reeker, our planner, is going to do a little presentation when he does his monthly presentation. He's going to do a little presentation about density, because we've had some questions from the public about density recently, and he's going to just share some information that he knows about it and educate everybody a little bit, so we all kind of have a base.
Okay. I mean, it seems like we're getting further along. I noticed that there's a developer named in the document, and then it looks like you're trying to change zoning. Are we talking about this as a community, or is this something you've decided on and are just moving forward with the plan?
No, we're still at the very beginning stages. Nothing's changed.
Okay. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Mr. Hatfield,
If I may, I printed this out. I didn't know who was going to be here tonight. This is about the way that it would be rezoned. The TOD and the regulations.
Is that okay? Is that okay that you show me?
It came right from our online code book, section 195,
Dash 20.
zoning 195. And I just printed it out because I too had a lot of questions that I needed answered. So I went back and pulled this out. On our webpage, on our home screen, it forms and documents? And it's somewhere on the homepage. And I went on there and I found our online code book. And that's where I got these definitions of it. And it talks about if we allow for this TOD, why it's a TOD, because of its location close to the train station to help avoid lots of extra traffic. That's why it would be proposed to be where we think where it's talked about to be. But all that information, so if you want to, in all your free time, go through that, it makes for fun reading. But there's lots of information about our different zoning and density in that code book that might help a little bit with understanding all this that we're talking about. So I wanted to share that with you.
I'll read it and see what
Okay.
I think, and maybe I'll be back with more questions. I mean,
Okay.
The train, unfortunately, people aren't running a lot into the city anymore, but I get the general idea. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I actually have statistics on that. I was reading about people taking the trains. In 2010, I haven't gotten any updated numbers yet, 83% of the people in this area drive alone to work. Carpool about 5.8, and taking trains is about 4%. So now with the pandemic and people not having to travel into work, I wonder what that percentage is. So I did put some feelers out to try to find out what the percentage is. And since this is from 2010, that information might be able to help us as well.
I'll stay on now, right? Okay, well, thank you. I'll look forward to more information.
Okay.
If I just comment on what Ms. Kane said, because I was a trained person for 30 years.
Yeah.
Big public, I took it for years. I could have driven, I didn't because I just didn't. Parking's expensive, congestion. But I've noticed, you probably all have noticed, I live in North Wales, Pembroke, those lots are not even half full anymore. I mean, people just have changed their habits, maybe permanently, hopefully not, that people will get to meet in person, perhaps
Yeah.
more often going forward. I think the issue perhaps might be with more housing, that you're going to have more trips. And I don't know what the number is for each household, how many trips. You have Station Square, for example, across the street, where those parking lots are full of cars. So I don't see, I mean, their proximity is close enough, I suppose, to be considered. I don't know. I guess my point is, I'm not so sure how being close to the train station really is effectual for people walking to and from when A, they're not taking it, B, each person has 2 cars pretty much.
Thank you,
So,
Fred.
if you look at the number of trips, and yeah, I learned a lot
Thank you.
from the last meeting about trips and trips, whatever, so I'm just curious how that affects.
I went to a meeting last week with
Yes.
the Montgomery County Association of Township Commissioners, and we're from all over, lots of people from different parts of the county. And we had a presentation by the, I forget his name, Matt Evans.
I think he's the transportation planning director for the county
Yeah,
planning commission.
That's his title, and he spoke to the group. And he gave us a little presentation, and he's saying that we're seeing more density and infill development now in the county. And he went on to say that they're not building, the trend now is not to build single-family homes like, why we moved to this township, that the trend is going toward high-density homes now. And is that what we want Upper Gwynedd to be? Filled with high-density homes? Well, like you said, we're already built out pretty much, or Mr. Hatfield.
And plus, the comprehensive plan you have, I think it's over 90% of the people like the mix that we have.
Right.
I mean, the numbers are pretty telling, so I guess I'm not for or against, I'm not passing judgment in any sense. I'm just, as a consideration, if people moved up here like most of us did for whatever, because of work or lower taxes or, things are well run up here. Does that
Former
affect
commissioner
the
called
quality
it
of
a
life?
bedroom community.
I'm sorry?
A former commissioner, Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
he referred to this a lot as a bedroom community. And I think it is, and I don't see how much more, as from 2020, when this board we switched over, do you know how many housing developments and whatnot that we have just approved? That just this board has approved?
Since what, 2020?
Yeah.
Just give me a moment. I could say under, what, 5, 6 maybe?
0. We have not. When Denise and I joined the board in 2018, there were a few that were started. Some were started, we're still dealing with some that were started in 2010.
Okay.
So since 2020, we have not approved any. There's Roosevelt Court that was started with the former board. That all got started. Samantha Court was all done by us. Even Gwynedd Park over by the ball fields, that was already started. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
so-
there's been different phases, of course.
Yep, so that Newbury Court, all those developments were all started. We have yet to start one. So
So the Jeppy property was not part of that?
that started before 2020.
But the approval was done by this board, is that correct?
Part of the approval, Denise? No, they still had the approval there. It was, right, Denise? It
But
was-
you had had the final approval. I've sat at these meetings where you approve these, which is
Yeah,
fine. I'm not
yeah.
arguing for it.
They were all started before this board.
We're talking started, maybe we're in semantics here, but I'm not talking about start. I'm talking about actual approval came from this board.
Yeah, then that's,
So it's
yeah,
not starting,
2020
you
was-
approved them.
Yeah, 2020 was, but they had started, like I said, and we had to get
So
everybody.
it's not
caught up.
0 then.
It was started before, we approved it, but it was started before.
My
Yeah,
point is, you
Yeah.
could have disapproved. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I don't want to take up people's
yeah,
time.
no, I get it, I
I'm not
understand.
trying to be semantic here. I'm just saying that.
No, and it's good to talk like this.
Yeah,
For
I
people that are
appreciate it.
listening, just to clarify things. I think.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Fred.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Sandra.
We should really talk about that you could turn it straight over to Mr. Van Reeker.
Oh,
Because he's
all right.
always first, so it's like you turn it to me and I turn it to
Why
Van.
do I do that? You're right.
you,
Okay,
Ms.
but-
I should start
Ms.
doing that
Manager.
afterwards. Never mind, I
nice
take
that
it back from
you're- yeah.
Sandra, and now I give it to Van.
Is this working? Can I be heard? Thank you, Sandra, and, okay, so it looks like it's a lot here, but I can get this done pretty quickly. The first 2 bullets deal with zoning. So the first one is a zoning map amendment that was completed, 375 Morris Road. We know it affectionately as the former Axe corporate offices pursuant to a number of public hearing and a number of meetings before the Planning Commission. That June the 7th was approved by the commissioners. Fred, there were notes of testimony taken, so the notes, when the notes come in, can you hear me? So when the notes come in, you'll be able to read the whole notes of testimony if you wish. Give us another 2 weeks. Well, you asked, so you'll have plenty to read. Next is the map amendment for 1500 Pembroke Parkway, also a subject of earlier conversation. It's really great, an outgrowth of the comprehensive plan. Look, you either believe in planning or you don't. You engage planning assistance, the county comprehensive plan, along with a number of planning members who were township residents, and after 2.5 years of planning, there were a very few areas that were identified as having the potential for rezoning for higher density residential. As it turns out, this one is in an industrial district, easily equipped to accommodate additional traffic. When you read that, Mr. Hatfield, you'll see, you read the ordinance that Liz gave you, that any applicant, it's a conditional use requirement. So we look at the plan, the commissioners look at the plan, the proposals, and the traffic study, along with sewer impacts and stormwater management. So it's one of those newer kinds of ordinances that requires the applicant to prepare a lot of information for the township to consider. The new, if it's adopted, the new TOD 2 is what we're referring to it as, would emulate, but not be exactly the same as the district you're going to read from. But it shares the same proposal by Montgomery County that it falls within the 1.5 mile radius of a railroad station, in this case, the Pinbrook Station. Look, Fred, I wish I could tell you what was going to happen in 10 years from now. I can't tell you what's going to happen in 5 months from now. But overall, access to public transit seems to be a key indicator for higher density consideration. So that's really where we are, and you'll hear all the applications. Okay.
Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
ahead.
I think this has come up at a couple meetings. Could you just briefly touch on how development begins in a town? Like, one thing that I think that maybe sometimes gets missed is that developers approach the township and make an application. The township does not send a message out to the world saying, like, we want high-density development or we don't. The planning document, the comprehensive plan, dictates a framework of what is acceptable per the planning principles. Did I just answer the
You said it better
question
than
I
I
asked
can.
you?
When you answer your own question, you're doing a good job. So in effect, yes. And plans are propagated by applicants, by property owners. They're reviewed by municipalities. It's that way all over Montgomery County, all over Pennsylvania. And pursuant to evaluation, the public hearing process, a plan is either accepted in part, accepted in whole, in total, or denied. That's the process.
And that all occurs in the public meeting space. There's also parts of plan review that happen at a staff level, which is where this text amendment is right now, where you, as our planning consultant, is reviewing what the applicant staff have prepared. Lauren might review it, our engineers might review it, and then we move forward with the formal hearing.
Perfectly accurate.
Thank
I
you.
wouldn't want to add anything to that. It's good. So thank you, Sandra. So the next, actually, for the third point of conversation, I wanted to skip, if I could, before I forget, I don't want to forget it, while we're on zoning amendments, to item 15. It was already on the agenda. I didn't want to add it a second time. Item 15 under the Ruth Damsker agenda is a repealer ordinance. It's section 10.2, also known as the Sudleytown Pike Traffic Management and Overlay District. It was created about 5 years ago with the hopes of, with the prospect, it's an overlay, so it doesn't change the underlying code, with the thinking that it might be applicable to a few properties along Sudleytown Pike. Two of them were the Jeppy property, which is now previously mentioned, has been approved by for a Wheatley Walk, 17 townhouses. Warren and I have talked about this, and it's my recommendation, and I believe that the solicitor's office has agreed, that if we have a zoning district, a text, for which we have no map amendment, we should either find a map amendment and create a property or rescind the district. It used to be called a floating zone. With overlay zoning, maybe not so much, but it's still somewhat questionable. So we weren't ready to move on a new district. I didn't like the fact that we had the text, the underlying text, that didn't have any place to be mapped. So for the time being, we're recommending that the text be repealed, and it has not been used yet. It may be someday, and if we decide that future properties come before the commission and the planning commission that are recommended for a like or similar application, we can readopt it. Having it be on our books but not mapped was under a prior application used as a challenge, a matter of challenge before the zoning hearing board. I didn't believe it had a lot of merit, and I don't think that Lauren did, but the fact that something could be used in that manner, I think, suggested to me that we would recommend, and we have a repealer ordinance that simply is going to undo the text for the Sudleytown Pike Overlay District 10.2. You can read it for yourself. Questions on that one? I think we talked about that previously, but okay, thank you. So the next ones are all zoning hearing board matters. 22-03 Prospect Avenue Sanctuary United Methodist Church. And that was heard but continued to June 28th. This was a request for numerous variances for a sign that included LED messaging. One of the aspects of the request was that the applicant, the church, wished to increase the rapidity of change. And since that hearing, the applicant has withdrawn its request to increase or change the rapidity of the message changes. And so they're going to return to simply update the record on the 28th with the other aspects of the zoning request intact. Are there questions on that one? Next, Supplee Road, 1708, dimensional variance that was approved. Lot 2, we tentatively have assigned it an address as 211 Gwynedd Avenue for a single-family dwelling. The only issues in question were, would the zoning hearing board find that a 6-foot dimensional variance in the front of the house and a 10-foot dimensional variance to the rear of the house, the front for a porch and the rear for a patio, be acceptable? The zoning hearing board did. It's to be a part of a single-family dwelling. That was approved May 31st. Next, CHP 2209, that was a request for an indoor pool. That was approved. The neighbors, those that attended, there was no opposition whatsoever. That was also approved on the 31st. The next 4 are new zoning hearing board applications. They'll be heard June 28th. 1042 Dickerson Road, pretty basic. House is built, driveway is built. It's discovered by the now owner, resident owner, that he needs a bit more space to back his vehicles out of the garage in order to turn and leave the property facing forward, which is always recommended when you enter out into a street. In order to do that, he needs a dimensional variance to reduce the 6-foot setback from your property line for a driveway to 2 feet. That property boundary happens to be adjacent to Pico. So there's no immediate residential neighbor. That will be heard on the 28th. I'm just going to keep going unless somebody raises their hand and says stop. 201 Church Road. This is currently owned by Volpe. It is formerly the Abundant Life Church property, split zoned. Front part is zoned, the front lawn is zoned R2, the rear part is zoned LI. Applicant Little Sprouts, our neighbor to the west, about 200 yards, has said to us that he has had a continual 5-year waiting list of 100 or more students to come to be cared for locally, and he's requested a space. We'll hear more about it before the zoning hearing board. I see it as a special exception for a like or similar use. They're fully prepared to make a full presentation. They have all the details and facts ready to go. My comments will be that we entertain, if the zoning hearing board is so inclined, approval, subject to the township RVE engineer, township engineering, and our traffic consultant looking over the circulation and parking plan for the students as they arrive and depart. Static parking, once the school is in operation, will be minimal. They'll need less than 30 spaces. So that's an existing property on a site that is largely vacant, and this is one of a number of new uses for that property. I'll keep going. 1975 Blue Fox, CHB 22-12, very unusual property. It's an elliptical shaped lot that has 3.5 sides of frontage to Blue Fox Road because it's circular. It's on a cul-de-sac, and it has one side rear yard, and the rest of the lot has front yard frontage. So 80% of the property has frontage to a street, which makes it a front yard. And so to do anything beyond the building envelope, such as an accessory structure or an addition, would require an intrusion into the setbacks. It's dimensional in nature, and their request is to permit a shed and a sunroom addition. The sunroom would be attached. The shed would be detached. It's behind landscaping. It exists on the property. Residential, again. And then finally, also residential, 1192 Dickerson, ZHB 22-13, same sort of issue, corner property with 2 front yards. Given the composition of the property, they wish to construct it's a shed/garage that they would attach to the front of their driveway so it could be accessible by a vehicle. They need a variance because in addition to a front yard setback, which they don't violate, no accessory structure is permitted to be forward of a dwelling in a residential district. It would be. So it's a corner lot. It again has double front yards. And in the past, this sort of lot seems to be challenged relative to providing opportunity for accessory structures. That was 22-13. Questions? That's it for me. Questions from everybody? Anybody? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Van. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sandra.
Now I'm going to turn it over to our township engineer, Nick Cross.
Good evening. The only 2 projects of note tonight are first, Dickerson Road Drainage Improvements Project. That project's currently out to bid with the bid opening scheduled for Tuesday, June 28th. That project focuses on stormwater infrastructure improvements on Dickerson Road by Belfast Drive and Lenape Drive. And we will review the bids once they're opened and give our recommendation to award for the July board meeting. We actually have a pre-bid meeting on Wednesday for any prospective contractors who want to take a look at the site and ask any questions. And the second project is the Haynes Run Flood Mitigation Project. The township was awarded a Monco 2040 grant in May in the amount of $200,000 for Phase 1 construction. This is actually the second grant we've received for this project. Third grant, yeah.
Third grant, over $333,000.
We can't keep track. They're just coming in. So this amount will be used for construction for Phase 1 once we get into the construction phase next year. We're still in the design phase at the moment. And that's it. Any questions?
No questions. Great job, RVE, with that awesome grant acquisition for the Haynes Run project. Okay, moving along. In Commissioner Hull's section, next week, you all will be considering the staff departmental reports. As usual, I'd like to include those on the consent agenda, as well as the meeting minutes from May 9th and May 24th. I want to point out, while I have residents in the room, that we do have unfortunately, two vacancies on the Board of Appeals. And this is problematic in that the Board of Appeals is one of the most tricky boards to fill because you have to have a certain background to serve on that type of board. So you need experience in matters pertaining to building construction, or it may consist of licensure as an architect or an engineer in the construction industry, or an inspector or plan reviewer. So it's like a very specific set of experiences that we need our volunteers to have. So if anyone out there knows of anyone with those sets of experiences, tell them to let us know, because we are going to be posting, if the board approves it, to advertise to interview candidates for those positions. And items 11 and 12 will go on the consent agenda. I think probably that item 13 could as well. Okay, in Commissioner Carter's section, we have the approval to adopt the amended civil service rules. So as everyone knows, with all laws, sometimes case law changes the laws that we have on the books. So our civil service rules were last amended in 2019. We wanted to go through them again this year, which we did in conjunction. It was the chief, myself, and Deputy Chief Kiola, along with our labor attorney, Amy Snyder, reviewed all of the rules and created a new final draft. There were no major changes, just a few changes that we needed to make the rules match with first-class township code. So does anyone have any questions about that? That'll be up for your consideration next week. I don't think that that's appropriate for the consent agenda. Moving along, item 15, Van already spoke about. This is an authorization to advertise, and of course, the board would consider it then in July. The next two items, 16 and 17, are a MERC waiver request and an escrow release from Roosevelt Court. Both of those, I think, are good for the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions about either of those? They're sort of normal business around here. No? Okay. In Commissioner McNaney's section, we have a decision to start, so I'll turn that back to the board.
What did you want to say about that line item, though?
Oh, sorry, about 18?
Yeah.
Okay, so 18 is the Dickerson Road Drainage Project that Nick was just speaking about. In order to be able to move forward and meet the advertising deadlines, I authorized that advertisement, and now I need you all to ratify that advertisement.
Great. Do we have a motion to ratify the advertisement of the bid for the Dickerson Road Drainage Project?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Sandra, back to you.
Thanks, President Hull. So the next item is an approval of a bike race that'll be held here in Upper Gwynedd Township. The Police Department and Park and Rec Department sort of work on these in conjunction with each other, and they've recommended the approval of the Ride a Taxi a Bike Race. That is something that I think we could put on the consent agenda. We don't want to put on the consent agenda the next item, which is approval of a proclamation for Park and Rec Month, because they get a whole month. You guys have heard the other departments, they get a week here, a week there. Park and Rec, whole month of July is Park and Rec
A
Month.
day, sometimes just a
It
day.
isn't it? Yeah, sometimes just a day, you're right. Like administrative professionals. But the Park and Rec month is also coinciding with one of our busiest months that we have in the township with lots of great events. And I do want to highlight something that I just personally truly think is so cool that our Park and Rec department just thought of, which is the Unplugged Week. It starts this Sunday. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Oh my goodness, there's so many fun things planned. And it's directed at having families unplug from our electronics, get outside, play. Back in my Doylestown Township days, I did one of my favorite programs that I worked on was called No Child Left Inside. And we would have like a big day with our Park and Rec department, and it was all about like kids returning to play. So I love this week, and our Park and Rec director, Sarah, came up with the idea, and I just think it's so awesome. So make sure you join me for Mosaics with the Manager in the pavilion one of those days. And I think the commissioners have crafts with the commissioners, so we'll all be part of that Unplugged Week. No, it's Mosaic with the Manager, crafts with the commissioners.
Usurping your authority, I'm sorry.
The mosaics are just with me. I don't know what your craft is. It's probably also a mosaic, but yeah. But there's the best thing that I wanted to highlight is this is all free programming for the community. And it's all things I think kids would love to do. So I hope to see some people at these events. The next step is another really fun thing. This section always has all the good stuff. The fireworks contract for Carnival. This is another one I think that could go onto the consent agenda. It's sort of regular business this type of time of year as we start preparing for Carnival. There's an approval of a change order to TTI Environmental. This looks like a big one. It's $24,000, and the contract total is $264,000. Unfortunately, we have very wet ground here at the township, and when they were digging out our leaking heat, or assumed to be leaking old oil tank, the groundwater was just rushing into the hole. So that type of groundwater that's right there by oil tank can't just be like pumped and taken away. It has to be put in these huge containers, taken, treated, and disposed of properly. So that is what the change order is for, is dealing with all that groundwater. And I think while they were doing that work, it rained like a lot. So we unfortunately just had a lot of groundwater. But the good news is we now have a state-of-the-art underground storage tank that will comply with all DEP regulations. So I think that this change order, item number 22, could go on the consent agenda as well. Yeah, okay. All right, or it's item number 23. Sure, Fred, come on up. Yeah. No, we need all of our viewers at home need to be able to hear you. Yeah,
We have lots of them
I'm
though.
so tired of looking at the back of my head, I
yeah,
can't.
I know. Sorry about that.
No, can you tell me more about this bike race?
Oh, sure. The bike race.
They've had it here before.
Yeah, I don't think this is the first.
Does it run through like Sumney Town? I mean, it's got to be a straight road somewhere, right? I'm hoping.
Hang on, I just have to pull up the application. Oh,
I think it's a couple, isn't it Lansdale too, or somebody else?
yes, this one starts in Harleysville, so it's a big one. It's a like
I
multi.
see a lot of people like that,
Yes,
like that
yeah.
in France and stuff, and all these people. I was hoping
not
it
as
wasn't-
good as
I was
that
hoping it
one.
wasn't going through my neighborhood because a lot of things seem to go through my neighborhood, so that's
I
why.
feel like you have a neighborhood that's high on the bike race route.
Okay.
Yeah, but this one, I can't tell you, let me just see. So individuals along the race course will be notified by the police, and they'll erect lawn signs for the race. So it's a 21-mile ride going through Upper Gwynedd on Morris Road between Berks Road and South Valley Forge Road. So they're gonna be having waves of people racing, and it seems like you might miss this one. Just Morris, thanks, Chief, just Morris Road.
Is that a fundraiser, I guess?
Usually they are, but sometimes they're also
I was
just,
just curious. I'm not trying to like,
yeah, sorry. I don't think we.
Oh, that's fine.
We don't ask them that question. I
thank
don't
you.
think that's important, like from
I
our
was just looking for more information.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It is a charity bike ride.
Oh, thanks.
It is a charity bike ride.
Oh, that
That is
makes
their, how they labeled it, yes.
Okay. Keeping me on my toes. That's good. Thanks for asking, Fred. Okay, where was I? So we are moving into Commissioner Similaro's section of the agenda with an approval of a change order for biomag piping and valve upgrade for the plant. This is part of what we discussed a few months ago when the board amended the budget to allow for some upgrades to the plant. This is one of those upgrades, and this is specific for our biomag piping. So we have our biomag system with the new flow that we have from the WIP project. We need to expand the capacity of that piping. That's what this project is. And because we still have a contract open with Blooming Glen for that work, this would be done as a change order. We have approval of a payment to Blooming Glen for that same project. So if you approve the change order, then the payment follows next. Same with a change order to BSI for the pump stations. This is in the amount of $15,000. It's a smaller scope of work, but just some of the final work to complete the WIP, the never-ending WIP. That's how it feels these days. Item number 27 is an update to Merck's 537 plan. Staff are still reviewing this, so it might be changed on the business meeting agenda to say authorization to advertise the 537 plan amendment. I'm not sure how far along and ready we are for this, but you'll see on the 21st as staff works through this. And then lastly, there's approval of a resolution 19-2022. We're still waiting on one more quote from a contractor to be able to move forward with this, but it wasn't even a tropical, I was trying to think of the name of a tropical storm, but we didn't have a tropical storm. We just had a lot of rain on one day and it caused some SSOs at the plant. So in order to correct that and not have that occur again, we have to do some emergency purchasing to be able to fix several sections. I skipped 28. The intergovernmental agreement with Lansdale, so. I know, it's so exciting compared to the bike race. Item 28 is an addendum to our intergovernmental agreement with Lansdale Borough for MERC capacity, and that ties to item 27, which is the 537 plan update. MERC is looking to sort of be redundant with their flow, and in this case, it's a purposeful redundancy where they have two options of sending their flow to Upper Gwynedd or to Lansdale in case there's some sort of issue. So in order to do that, they need to update their 537 plan, and we need to update our intergovernmental agreement with Lansdale. So back to that emergency purchasing, there's quite a few different vendors that we're going to be needing to utilize to correct our several sections of the process that have to do with the influent and effluent section of the process, but there will be more in the packet next week about that. That was a lot of talking. The last two items are going to be the open and paid invoices as usual.
Great.
Any questions?
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Does anybody on the board have anything else? No? I just wanted to say a quick reminder. I was so excited when I read the Reporter on Sunday that they had a big article about Juneteenth, because this coming weekend is the Juneteenth weekend. It's a relatively new holiday, and there's so many events going on throughout the county for Juneteenth. It's wonderful. However, they forgot to mention North Wales activities. The library is having a Juneteenth celebration this coming Friday. And we brought it up when we made the Juneteenth proclamation in May, but I just wanted to put another reminder out there that it is happening on this coming Friday, the 17th, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And it is called Jazzy Juneteenth. They are advertising live music, vendors, food, and fun. So check it out. It'll be at the library. And if that's all, then I would like to thank everyone for coming this evening, and meeting adjourned.